Welcome back. It's time for the Roundtable. There's been some impressive investing going on in the Capital Region. Sports blogs, healthy meals, and security software. What does this say about the diversity of investors and the success of what the Capital Region has to offer? Plus, it's Jobs Numbers Week. Joining me to discuss all that and more, Josh Boak, economics reporter for the Associated Press, and Stephen Overly, journalist with Capital Business, a publication of the Washington Post. Gentlemen, welcome back to both of you. Josh, let me start with you. We had jobs numbers out Friday. The president was quick to give his spin even before announcing his defense secretary. What's the take?
Huge blowout number, more than 300,000 jobs. The economy looks the best it has since 1999. And you know, all you got was, this is a Christmas gift, deck the halls with bowels of hiring, all that kind of thing.
Very nice.
And what was important was that it was broad-based. So you saw gains all across the economy, and that suggests underlying strength.
So I'm going to segue perfectly over to Stephen Overly talking about jobs in this region, because Stephen, you've been writing about big investments in companies here in Washington. First, talk to me about Vox, because they were the one who really caught Wall Street's eye this week. What is Vox? Who is Vox? And why is it valued so dearly?
Sure. So Vox raised $46.5 million from investors this week, giving them a valuation of about $380 million, which is obviously a pretty sizable price tag.
$1 million. $1
million, exactly, exactly. Many folks will know Vox from their various media properties. So if you're a sports fan, you may know SB Nation, which is a collection of sports blog. If you follow tech, it's The Verge.
If you're a Washington geek, it's Ezra Klein.
Right, Ezra Klein and Vox.com, exactly.
But come on, that's hardly Sports Illustrated. Why is there so much of a premium now on a company like Vox?
Well, investors seem to be very bullish about digital media outlets. BuzzFeed being another example. You know, their
valuation $850 million. It just is huge numbers.
Right, and there used to be trepidation about those kind of businesses, but I think now folks are starting to see you can make money and really build an audience with an online-only publication.
I'm going to get back to you on some of the other big names that have been sweet to investors lately, but Josh, I want to turn to you in terms of where you think this is all going in terms of jobs. Is there enough growth momentum in the areas that are going to matter most? Because let's face it, some of these companies are not the ones that are going to be huge employers. So what does this all mean and play out in terms of job growth for the future?
So the big question is, do we start getting jobs that pay great salaries? Not just like
the wages have continued to be flat.
That's exactly right. And the economists I spoke with today say a year from now, we're really going to see wages take off because workers will have found the right fit for them.
Well, that's what they keep saying. They keep saying the wages are there for the trained workers. So you're saying the wages will be there across the board, even in, say, manufacturing jobs and elsewhere?
Well, what economists love to talk about is something called slack. That means there's just too many workers for the jobs available. That pool of workers is starting to dry up, and wages are a lagging indicator. So as that pool starts to diminish, there's going to be upward pressure on wages. Now, one of the big things we're starting to see is that industries that pay more are starting to hire more as a share of our monthly job gains. That's what you should keep your eye on.
Okay, Stephen, I'm going to turn back to you because you noted a trend here with Vox, because you'd point to some other Washington companies that have also looked very sweet to investors, Sweet Greens and others. Talk to me about what you're seeing in terms of trends, in terms of big valuations for Washington companies.
Sure, but we've seen several companies in just the last month raise pretty significant amounts of capital from investors. You mentioned Sweet Green, which is a salad company.
Started by some Georgetown students who people didn't think would go anywhere, and it's huge.
Exactly. They have 29 locations now up and down the eastern seaboard. We also have Echo 360, which is an education technology company, and Endgame, a cybersecurity company. They all raised money $18 million or higher in just the last month. And I think what this speaks to is this idea that the DC economy is starting to diversify. Everyone says we need to wean our reliance from the federal government and contractors, and we're now starting to see businesses that don't operate in that market start to gain some traction.
Which is heartening indeed. Josh, I want to turn to you, though, because there's been a little bit of talk this week about some pushback from progressives with all of this momentum on Wall Street and for companies. Good news for lots of different people, but progressives say Main Street is still missing out, and they're taking out their ire on the White House. They're pushing back against their nominee for the #3 job at the Treasury Department. Normally this wouldn't get much notice, but he's a Wall Street guy, and it's the Elizabeth Warren faction that's pushing back. What does all this mean? Why should anyone care?
So Antonio Weiss is his name. He's a banker. He's going to get a bonus if he's able to jump to the government to be the #3 guy at Treasury.
From laissez-faire, where he's been the banker.
That's exactly right. I mean, in a sense, Washington cares about his job and RG3's job. Like, those are the two big jobs we care about. And this really has its roots in the financial crisis. Because coming out of that financial crisis, a lot of Americans felt as though there were two sets of rules, one for Wall Streeters and one for everyone else.
So with less than a minute, then, break it all down. Why does the recession spill over now to this guy?
You saw all kinds of Wall Street firms that were saved. Elizabeth Warren was part of the Obama administration at the time. She advocated for consumers. For the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, you had more than 5.3 million foreclosures, and at the end of the day, Wall Street players seem to be getting a better deal than average Americans. That's naturally going to create the tension that we see with the Senate in this appointment. If it didn't happen, it would be weird.
At the end of the day, 5 seconds. Does he get approved, or does he have to take a hike?
My educated guess, which is not necessarily smart, is yes, he does get approved.
You're very smart. Thank you both for joining us for this week's Roundtable, and we'll be right back.
Oh, yeah.